No, God, it was just, my life mission was to go to shows, take off and go to a show, and God, it was fun times. Yeah, best times of my life with Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. When they come to take you down.
Jerry Garcia left an impression on me, and you can't describe him. You really can't.
What was he to his fans, you think?
A god, an absolute god. Jerry was a god.
Oh, well, they'll go strong forever, you know. It's a feeling, it's a groove. We're just gonna have to get together and find things to gather around and just to see each other and be happy, you know.
It's always there. It's not gonna go away.
Jerry Garcia's fans, of course, are known for their unity, and we're starting to see some of that unity out here now as they begin to arrive for that vigil that's planned out here later on. Coming up at 5, we'll hear from more of them, as well as a friend who's spent years with the band. Reporting live from Griffith Park, I'm Maggie Rodriguez, Channel 7 Eyewitness.
It was best-known musician from the Grateful Dead band, one of the highest-grossing touring groups in the country over the past 4 decades, pulling in tens of millions of dollars a year. Bob Pisani has more.
At K-Rock in New York City, veteran DJ Dave Herman began playing nothing but Grateful Dead music when the news was announced.
This is the classic rock station, 92.3 K-Rock.
The Grateful Dead are an example of how you can be at the very, very top for over a quarter of a century and do it completely on your own terms.
Indeed, the Grateful Dead were more than a rock band. To many, they were a way of life. But the band achieved success in an unusual way. In a career that spanned nearly 30 years, the Dead had only one top 10 hit, and their album sales were small compared to other top groups. But record sales were not what this band was all about. It was the legendary live performances, like the many they gave here at Madison Square Garden, that kept the fans coming back for more. Indeed, this band was such a force in the concert industry that it might have more properly been called the Grateful Dead, Inc. Thanks to incessant touring, the Grateful Dead were the #1 concert act between 1986 and 1995. Bringing in more than $297 million in that period. Not even the Rolling Stones brought in that kind of money. Will the band survive? One observer of the business says it's unlikely.
Jerry Garcia and Bob Weir, the guitar players and singers, are the key members of the group. And it's not likely that they would tour or even exist as the Grateful Dead without one of those 2 members.
That's likely to hurt concert promoters who have relied on the Dead for decades. But fans who have been mourning both on the air and online through the internet are likely to be hurt even more. For Steals and Deals, I'm Bob Pisani.
And that's all for now. But tomorrow, don't let your pet suffer.
And a voice millions of fans adore. But tonight, the world mourns his death. Good evening, everybody. It's 5 o'clock, and I'm Paul Moyer.
And I'm Colleen Williams.
We begin tonight at 5 o'clock with Jerry Garcia, dead at the age of 53. He was a musical phenomenon. From the 1960s to the 1990s, he was there playing his music all along the way. He gathered a huge following, as you know. His fans are young and old. His death, a great tragedy to all of them. These are just some of the fans. They are called Deadheads, as you know. Some follow the band from city to city. But Garcia was also an industry, not just the music, but ties, clothing. And Garcia even had his own line of ties. We begin our live coverage with 2 reports tonight. Garrett Glazer with a look back, and Patrick Healy with more on the fans of Jerry Garcia. We begin tonight with Garrett.
Thanks, Paul. I was trying to think of words that would mean Jerry Garcia to people. Love, acceptance, tolerance, family, inclusiveness. Those are some of the words today used by fans to describe what it was Jerry Garcia and the Dead gave to the world. And this evening, the world is mourning the loss of Jerry Garcia and remembering his special gifts.
Lead guitarist, composer, vocalist. You need music, Garcia once said. I don't know why. He created the most popular touring act in the United States, grossing tens of millions of dollars each year. When he died early this morning, he left behind a world that has not forgotten. In Los Angeles, the hosts of an all Grateful Dead weekly radio show told us Garcia is irreplaceable.
Brought together more people than any organized religion I can think of, and made more people happy, and will keep making them happy. Just because he's dead doesn't mean that the energy isn't going to survive.
If Garcia evoked memories of the 60s, his phenomenon was also very much about the 90s. Garcia's death was a hot topic on America Online today, where there's a permanent Grateful Dead internet site. In San Francisco this evening, as thousands mourn Garcia at the Polo Field in Golden Gate Park, there is a sense of numbness, but true to Garcia's spirit, a heightened sense of family as well.
Turn around to see. Wakely to their own immense...
Well, today the band's manager said it was ironic that Jerry Garcia died of a heart attack just as he was committing himself to a healthier life. More exercise, no drugs, better diet. He leaves behind a wife, 4 daughters, and a world he enriched. Paul.
He transcended time and generations, that man, and not many of his ilk can do that.
Absolutely, and if you look at the numbers, they tour all year long, and more people go to see them, 2 million a year, more than any other act.
All right, Garrett, thank you. The Grateful Dead, as we mentioned, boasts one of the largest and most loyal followings in all of rock and roll. And the word this morning of Garcia's death is devastating news for Grateful Dead fans, Deadheads as they call them, everywhere. Patrick Healy right now live at Griffith Park with reaction to his passing. Patrick?
Well, Colleen, we're in the parking lot next to the merry-go-round, and here, under the spell of Garcia's memory, it's almost as if the 60s have been reborn. Some of us remember when there used to be weekly love-ins here. Now there's an impromptu gathering of Deadheads this evening. But before we get their thoughts, consider 2 other locations where Garcia and his influence are remembered fondly. First, what they used to call a head shop, Captain Ed's, where Jerry Garcia was and is an icon.
It's the end of an era. Yeah, the Grateful Dead was the link between the 60s and the 90s.
And at the other extreme, a Ben & Jerry's ice cream shop, where tribute to the Dead's lead guitarist has been frozen in time as Jerry Garcia.
So it's really strange to think that Jerry Garcia is dead now. I just walked in here and found out about it.
Back live in Griffith Park with an impromptu gathering of, well, is it fair to call everybody Deadheads? Is that a fair description? Fair. How about this young lady? You're within arm's reach. Why is it important for you to come here to Griffith Park tonight to be with other fans? What's the significance?
To celebrate Jerry and the Grateful Dead, the wonderful music that they've offered us.
But it's more than music. We can see by how you're dressed. We can see by the microbus that's perched on top of this bus here. It's a whole ethos.
Life. Yes, it's a way of life. Mm-hmm.
Is it? Well, we saw on the internet today, somebody wrote the 60s are finally over. Are they?
I don't think so. I mean, no. The 60s are over, yes, but the way of life is, no.
All right, well, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to us on the Channel 4 News at 6. We're going to talk to some more of the Deadheads gathered here in Griffith Park. Reporting live, Patrick Healy, Channel 4 News. Colleen and Paul.
All right, Patrick, thank you. There are, of course, dozens of albums where fans can still hear Jerry Garcia, but Garcia and the Grateful Dead's greatest legacy was perhaps their live performances. They will never be the same. Folk musician Arlo Guthrie said this about Garcia and the Dead. They may be one of the last great spontaneous bands, people who were not afraid to experiment as they were doing it. This was not pre-recorded music. We will have more on the legend and the man coming up at 6.
That was well said. More news right here.
And he was hospitalized again in 1991 with exhaustion. Flowers from fans now sit outside the Bay Area Drug Rehab Center, where he secretly checked himself in and where he suffered the fatal heart attack. Well, 3 other Grateful Dead band members have died over the years, one in a car crash, another from alcohol abuse, and yet another from a drug overdose. One Deadhead said of Garcia's death today, quote, "The 60s are finally over." Linda, back to you.
All right, Brad, and the Grateful Dead has a certain mass appeal that crosses age and cultural lines. Coming up at 5:30, a look at the fans, from the Deadheads to the Vice President of the United States, and how they're reacting to today's news.
A jail escapee who has been
proud that this music transcended the classes, it transcended the generations.
I don't consider myself a deadhead in that sense, but I must admit that I'm getting depressed and I'm in shock over it. It's
it's a very important end to something. When you saw him one-on-one, you were impressed by the fact that he was so open about himself and so unexcited about himself. He was not impressed with the Grateful Dead or with himself or even his fellow band members except for the music made together. They lived for those moments.
All his songs, everything was so positive. I mean, everybody, you know, gives us positive vibes, and in return we give it to each other and to him. And it's a sad thing he died.
Been the best movement in America's ever had. And what do they mean? You got to listen to the music because that's where it's at, is the music.
Thought he was a spiritual leader. The music is about how you can take a room full of people and turn them into one big spirit. And when you felt that, if you were ever there, it was very real and very affecting for your life.
So will this band play again? We haven't spoken exactly to the members themselves, but a lot of their colleagues say they believe that a certain amount of time will be allowed to elapse, and then we'll hear from the Grateful Dead again. You got to remember that refrain, I will survive. Lyndon, back to you.
Thank you, Greg. This is a band that had basically one hit single in the span of 30 years. They cut their last studio work some 16 years ago. For the benefit of those people who weren't too familiar with Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead, what have the people around you been saying about what was so special about them and him?
It was really it was the characters involved. It was the people who sang and performed this music. It was a phenomenon. It wasn't just the tunes. It wasn't just the words. It was all of that. It was what these people meant with the music they were singing. It was what these people meant with the songs and the words they were singing. We had a very unique, if I can use an often used phrase, character in the Grateful Dead. They meant a lot to a lot of people. And most importantly, their music, like the band, survived. It transcended the generations. It was pure rock and roll. It was pure old San Francisco. And a lot of people worldwide relate to that. Rich, poor, hippie, left, right, it really didn't matter. It was a music that a lot of people enjoyed. And I think, and they stuck with that music. They didn't try to change it over the years. And by sticking to what they knew best, what they believed in, they attracted more fans and more fans through the decades.
All right, CNN's Greg Lefebvre in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco. Thanks very much. We'll be bringing you more throughout the evening on the life of Jerry Garcia.
Memorable passing. And that is it now for Prime News. I'm Bobby Batiste.
And indeed appears still to be playing because we have an empty chair at the location that he was supposed to be filling right now. So I'm going to go back for a moment to David Crosby. And David, perhaps you would explain to me, because you've had this kind of relationship yourself with the audience, about that unique interplay between the Dead and the audience. Was it intentional?
You mean, did the Dead intend it?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. They intended to play some good music and have a great time doing it. They have found out, as you know, many of us found out, if you go long enough, that it doesn't do too well to really watch too closely what you're doing. You tend to think, gee, I'm significant, you know, which doesn't work. The relationship they developed with their audience was based on their own ability to create magic, which they did regularly, and their complete lack of pretense. The audience loved that, and they still do. Actually, they were very enigmatic on stage. They wouldn't, it's not like they would dance around or, you know, do a show. They played the music, and if there was interplay, it was always subtle. You had to really watch for it.
What is it that has managed to bridge those generations? Usually the music that is beloved by one generation is scorned by the next.
We've wondered about that ourselves. I think most groups, or the few groups that have jumped a generation, you know, sit there happily puzzled about it. I think, and I want to believe, that it's the songs. If you write songs that are about something, instead of just Yahoo, you know, if you write songs that really make people feel something, they tend to wear well. They tend to transcend, you know, the local fad and fashion, you know, that goes by each year.
You bring us, David, exactly to where we want to be. Let me first thank you and John Perales of the New York Times and, of course, Senator Pat Leahy. But when we come back, we are going to end with the music that made Jerry Garcia an American icon.
It's Ace Dollar Days, where a little loose change can get you lots of great stuff, including things like this for just $1 each.